and thank you for being here. We're going to discuss about world trade in the following about 40 minutes, 39 minutes anyway. We're talking about TV times, that's why. Let me introduce you our distinguished guests on the right, as I'm looking on the right, of course, as you're looking on the left. Mr. Robin van Puyenbroeck. Did I pronounce it correct?
That's a score 9 out of 10, yes.
Okay. Maybe I can do it better, but I will try till the end of this discussion. He's Executive Director and Business Development of the World Trade Centers Association, based in the United States, correct?
Yes, that's 10 out of 10.
Okay, I'm approaching that. Thank you very much. And Mr. Dimitriadis, he's the President of External Relations Section of the European Economic and Social Committee. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to ask you both about the recent developments and how these developments are affecting world trade in general. Do you think that we're in front of significant changes in the way all countries are participating in world trade? Please.
Well, thank you. That's, of course, the question that everyone has and has been discussing. We're finding ourselves in quite a pickle, right? Because there's just so much going on. And things are changing not just every week or every day, but sometimes every minute. So I think what we're seeing is sort of a paradigm shift in how our global trading infrastructure has been operating since the Second World War. The stability that we've had is literally being redrawn and changing as we speak. We see an environment, and maybe we should not go into the tariff question again because it has been discussed over and over again at the conference. But look at it from a different angle. Mm-hmm. The stability, the post-Second World War stability, has been based on alliances. And alliances are based on trust, right? Alliances are based on a level of solidarity, if you like, solidarity in times of crisis. That is now changing into a world where many trading blocs and countries in the world are more narrowly focused on their national interest. And the way they approach relationships are more transactional. So that is for many countries out there a bit of a shock. Right? Because it's like all of a sudden, wait a minute, don't we have a relationship, don't we have an alliance? And all of a sudden, countries say, well, we now going to do exactly only what's good for us. So that is a huge change that is taking place that we're all still sort of waking up to. So where that's going to lead us is a very different question. I think the right answer to that is that we don't know. And in closing of this question is also when you look at, because my colleague here, you're based in Brussels. I'm actually from Brussels. So, you know, when you look at the transatlantic relationship, the reason why the EU was established in the first place, the European communities, this was a peace project. This was a peace project started after the Second World War. Right. It was based on an alliance. And the European Union is a union. It's not a federal infrastructure like the United States is. And it's an imperfect union. But it's based on the fact that we need to have alliances and an economic integration to never have war again. And that is something that people also, I think, in today's world tend to forget. So the changes that are happening, to your question, is, I think, much broader than the narrow impact on how we trade together and what the economics are.
Mm-hmm. That's clear, I think. Mr. Dimitriadis, what do you think about that?
I think, first of all, thank you very much. I think that we are living a very historic moment. We had the privilege, my generation had the privilege to live 60, 70 years, and I'm talking on behalf of the European Union because I had the privilege to live and to work in the European Union more than 30 years. We had the privilege to lead under peace and prosperity. And I agree totally that trade policies, trade security is a very important chapter of our relations, international relations, geopolitics. European Union played this card for more than 50, 60 years, supporting the underdeveloped countries establishing new networks around the world, trade networks, and of course we are continuing to work on that. But the last 20 days, we are working, we are living in a totally different environment. It is an earthquake. Because a lot of times I have to answer this question, my answer is we don't know the future. We don't know the next 10 minutes what will be happening in the world.
Exactly.
And this uncertainty creates big problems in our trade relations around the world.
Yeah, you talked about trade security. What is trade security, and is it connected only with the tariffs issue?
No. Trade security, first of all, it is stability and confidence. Now we are living without stability, without confidence, without security. There is no more rules on the table. And if we don't have rules, we use WTO for many, many decades as the main pillar of our trade relations in the world. And asking WTO or the international trade negotiations and legislation more or less between us to solve the problems between United States, China, EU, and all the other countries. But WTO doesn't exist. It's not visible anymore. And unfortunately, we lost our confidence, and we lost also our solidarity, because solidarity is very important. This angle between United States, Canada also very important, and EU was part of our stability.
Let me ask you now about your association. What do you advise your members to do in these times?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. I mean, so we are an international trade association, and we're probably the world's largest sort of business interconnector. We have about 300 World Trade Centers around the world in 100 countries that altogether probably represent about 1 million companies. And these are companies that are, these companies are by far and large small and medium enterprises. So we do not, with our system, represent the multinationals. What we see, what we hear now from companies, of course, day and night, is that there is this massive uncertainty, and that is literally detrimental to their business, because they do not have the bandwidth, the capacity to deal with changing custom arrangements and changing, forced changes in their logistics and their supply chains. They're not set up to cope with that. One shock, one change is one thing, but things that change constantly, that is really paralyzing these companies. But in extension, what you see now, of course, is that the risks that we see with all this is also two things. One is, let's look at, and this could be intended or unintended consequences, but this is consumer confidence. When people start no longer to believe that there's stability, what you were saying, then they will stop spending. And you see this already. Financial markets have reacted to this. The bond markets have reacted. Usually when financial markets go down, then bond markets tend to be going in the opposite direction. Today you see the opposite. They both go down. So once consumer spending, consumer confidence gets into malaise, you'll see companies putting a hold on investments. Because without that certainty, the company will adjust to any type of situation. That's the nature of business. But you need a stable framework where the goalpost isn't changing every day, basically. So once you're in that situation, you risk getting into an economically downward spiral. And if that is that a question, so then you're very quickly ending up in a recessionary environment. And then now what we see is also pretty unique. Are we ending up in an inflationary environment or in a stagflation environment? What are central banks going to do? Are they going to rise interest rates to tamper inflation, or are they going to lower interest rates to actually stimulate consumption? You can't do both. And on top of that, I think everybody's firepower is gone since COVID. So the capacity of central banks to actually to inject capital now in the economy is also limited. So what we're doing is we're providing our businesses, our members, basically trade information, right? So we continue, our mandate is to promote, to stimulate international trade and development. And we continue to tell, we just had our annual meeting actually in Marseille. We had hundreds of businesses in our World Trade Center from around the world, and we were saying, look, stay calm and keep trading at the end of the day. So we keep connecting people. Businesses will continue to talk to each other. So we need to continue to facilitate that dialogue and not shy away from it, because it's a very how would I say, it's easy now to get emotional and to get all sort of reactions, and you hear a lot of that here as well. People all have opinions and this should, but nothing then happens, right? So businesses need to think about how they survive today and how they relate with their trading partners, because the arguments are not between individual businesses that are trading. They want to continue doing that. Mm-hmm. So that is sort of the message, to continue to be that facilitator and to continue to promote that dialogue, that people-to-people, also city-to-city type of dialogue. So I think we have an important role to play there, and we're continuing to do that, trying to stay under that fray, all of that noise, to make sure people continue to talk to each other and sustain the trading as much as they possibly can.
Okay, but suppose these tariffs are an obstacle to this situation. The dialogue and cooperation, isn't it?
That will continue. That dialogue and that sort of infrastructure of the platform that we would provide for people to come together will continue to be there. It may just shift, because you see now the EU signed its trade agreement with Latin American countries after 20-something years. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because of an external pressure, because of the situation that we're in. We'll probably see a trade deal with India coming up very soon, because so the trade, where the trade goes in the world, where the business relationship, that will also shift, right? Because it's all based on trust at the end of the day. So trading won't stop. I think we're in a hold and wait pattern now, and everybody will try to survive and not go under. But ultimately, whatever the outcome or non-outcome of the tariff discussion is, flows will go elsewhere. And we'll just see a complete recalibration of sort of the economy and who's going to be trading with who.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree about the dialogue?
Totally, I agree totally. First of all, it's necessary to clarify that we are talking for 99% of the European companies. SMEs are 99%. And to have 80 million Europeans working for SMEs. 80 million, between 350 million are working for SMEs. And SMEs are not flexible to change the daily life or the daily practices because they don't have this kind of capacity. This new environment destroyed totally the new environment. That means the SMEs is impossible to react in 24 hours or 48 hours. It's not Microsoft, it's not Google, we don't have this kind of mechanisms. Mm-hmm. That means destroyed the base of the businesses, the daily businesses. But of course, it's necessary to continue to work. We need this dialogue to continue to work on that. I don't know, frankly speaking, I have a lot of doubts about the tariffs. For this reason, I don't think that's the main point today, because we don't know in 20 days, maybe it will be a joke, the tariffs, or maybe it
or
will
a political power game.
Exactly, or maybe it is a nuclear bomb in the middle of nowhere. And nobody knows, but let's stay today and see how we can concentrate to give the input for the businesses, and especially the small, medium enterprises, to continue to work and to communicate between them and to participate to the dialogue.
How possible is to see some unexpected cooperations or even free trade zones like, for example, EU and China?
It is possible. It is possible to see, because it depends from the circumstances. At the moment, we don't know. Every scenario has a lot of aspects and a lot of different approaches, but it is possible. At the moment, I cannot see immediately. I have a lot of negotiations and debates in Brussels about this kind of new bilateral, trilateral, or multilateral, but it depends from the geopolitics. For the first time in our history, in my generation, we are looking that geopolitics change the whole economic environment. For example, the war in Ukraine changed the whole geopolitical environment in Europe. Mm-hmm. Now the war in Middle East and Gaza changed, and all what happened in the Middle East changed. And of course, new superpowers are coming. India is a new superpower, it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with this?
I
suppose yes, because I heard your last answer. But I need a clarification about that.
Yeah, but the good thing is I don't change my opinion after a minute, so that's... but yeah, no, I do agree.
You're not like President Trump.
I'm not going to comment on that. I mean, I'm not a politician, so... but I think what matters also is that, look, trade policies are also political instruments at the end of the day. So, again, this is all very shocking and frightening, but you know what? This is a political process, and it just needs to play out. And as you were saying, we don't know where this is going to end. But what we do see is that, again, shock goes through the system. And I think even, was it today, President Xi Jinping of China said, like, open the door to the European Union and say, maybe we should work on a trade deal. That was probably not even imaginable 2 weeks ago.
Of course.
Right? But that deal will only happen if both on the European side and the Chinese is considered a fair deal. Because I think a lot of people in Europe are also so shocked about what's happening from the US, but at the end of the day, there was a trade relationship where it was felt as being unfair on one part of the deal. And that was never addressed. Mm-hmm. And so now it's being addressed. So if you have two parties and one feels that the deal they have is really unfair, for whatever the reason is, and it's not addressed, you're going to have, again, a recalibration there. And that's what's happening. And the EU was never able to do a trade deal with China because there was so much disagreement on a number of things. We don't have to go into that. But now maybe both are being forced through external circumstances to actually get closer together. So again, everything then happens for a reason. And I think, I mean, you're the expert, but historically, the European Union has always been very, very good getting things done when there's a crisis.
Exactly.
Moment of crisis. That's when everything all of a sudden goes in overdrive, and it's always maybe running a little bit behind. That was mentioned earlier this morning as well. It's a very reactive sort of move, but rather than being proactive, because it's the European Union. It's a union of so many different countries and national political systems. But when the crisis is there, it tends to really get its act together, and I think we're seeing this very moment as well.
Does this even mean that we could see the EU coming closer to the US?
It is possible. Of course, everything is possible. But what the European Union is doing now is running all the multilateral agreements around the world. Look what happened 2 months ago. Ursula von der Leyen signed suddenly, after 10 years, the Mercosur Agreement. Mercosur Agreement and Samoa Agreement, a few months before, are very important for the European Union because are very big multilateral agreements with a lot of countries around the world. Now we have new agreements with Chile, New Zealand, Kenya. That means that the whole system is working to solve all these problems. And Europe tries to do it for a lot of times, not only for economic reasons, but a lot of times for political reasons, because the European Union needs more friends around the world. And trade relations are a weapon, is an equipment to establish not only economic relations, but also political relations.
No, it's exactly that, and I don't think the transatlantic bond is broken at all. I think there's just a different political strategy that's being implemented right now. This is a relationship that goes back 70 years. And look, we all said when Brexit happened, that's it, right? Look where we are. There's again a rapprochement happening. So the same will happen in that transatlantic relationship. And don't forget, there was another, let's go back to the shock that COVID, because you mentioned the geopolitical context there as well. Countries realized, entire nations and entire continents realized that they were dependent for food, for medication, from markets far away. The half of African countries depend on grain import from Ukraine. And that war, where they had nothing to, they were the victim of a war they had nothing to do with. All of a sudden they realized there was just no grain. During COVID, pharmaceuticals, vaccines. So from the US perspective, also the US realized that it's not manufacturing any pharmaceuticals, any medicine. And it was said over and over again, because we also have to, I think, be fair and look at both sort of arguments, that why are we not manufacturing medication in the US? Mm-hmm. Guess what happened? Today, a large multinational pharmaceutical company announced that they were going to do $23 billion investment in the US to start producing medication in the United States. So this is something the US has been asking for a very long time. So if you then look at, is this the result of the situation we're in? Yes, it is. So does it work from that perspective, in that narrow context? But yes, it does. So it's a matter of, in Europe, I know the terminology is more strategic autonomy, but it's about self-reliance for things that are critical to a nation. This is food, agriculture, this is defense, this is also health, pharma, right? So we're also seeing there more a different environment popping up where countries and nations and trading blocs realize that they have to be more self-reliant. Because those alliances that we had during COVID, everybody was trying to keep the vaccines and even the masks just for themselves, which is normal because you think about your own constituents first. There's nothing wrong with that. But in time of crisis, then all of a sudden that solidarity gets a stress test. So then you come to the realization that we need to make sure we can also actually have more of that closer to home. So I think what we're seeing now is not something that just happened overnight. It is the end product of a process that has been, I think, percolating for a very long time, but we're just a little shocked that it just bursted out now the way it did.
Let's see the same thing from the other side now. Is it possible that US is trying to press Europe to come to its side?
I do not know what the United States government is strategizing, but it's pretty clear, I think, in its message that it feels that the trade imbalance that exists is not fair and that it needs to be addressed.
And what do you think?
I think so. Yes, but don't forget that this is not it's not totally a new phenomenon. It happens the last decade. A lot of times we have seen a lot of signals and messages from the United States. During Biden's administration also, it was clear that the United States changed the main policies and basically the trade policy. It's not a bomb. Of course, now the messages are really very tough. Aggressive and tough. But during Biden's administration, we have also big downgrading of WTO, a lot of bilateral agreements between the United States and some countries of European Union all around the world. A lot of times we have a lot of conflicts between EU and United States and the bilateral economic and trade relations. It's not something that it happens like in one moment, not at all. Maybe from Obama's administration started slowly United States to change the approach from the last 60 years.
Now, you mentioned India, you mentioned some African countries, you mentioned some Latin American countries. Which are the countries that could rise in this environment as new powers? I mean, in world trade.
India, full stop.
Okay.
This is a totally new situation.
And not because of its population, I suppose?
No. Look at the GDP. Look what happened in India. Now, walking around the European capitals, you will see for the first time in the history, thousands of Indians traveling around the world. 1 billion people are starting for the first time in the history to traveling. This is a very clear message that India is becoming a very big superpower, economic superpower. For me, of course, South Africa, Brazil. I met 3 months ago President Lula. They have a lot of approach, a lot of visions, but Brazil has a lot of diversification and a lot of internal social problems, but some countries are coming. Kenya, for example, is an important country also. Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say India, because you said it 4 times, and I was actually in India 4 times last year for exactly that reason. Because for us, it's the largest growth market. And when you go there, it's incredible to see how the country is booming, from life science clusters to, right? So it has its demographics with it. So I fully agree that India is also, from a manufacturing perspective and everything else, and R&D, it's just going to keep growing. It's coming from a low base, of course, but it's growing very fast. I agree, Brazil, this is actually our 2nd largest growth market in Brazil, but it's a different type of economy. It's a smaller size. It's more of an agriculture powerhouse, I think, and some others. But let's not forget, you mentioned some African countries. I think let's look at Africa as a whole. It's a bit of a different conversation in the sense of it's not related to the situation we're in today, but if you just look at the demographics, and numbers don't lie, you'll see a doubling of the population in Africa in the next 20 years, a doubling. And so I think that the African continent in itself, they're trying to work with the Inter-African Free Trade area, so there's a lot of movement happening in the continent. You'll see it'll be the only continent on the planet with a youthful population.
Exactly.
So if we I can make that joke because I'm European, but I think, you know, we have to watch out that Europe is not becoming a retirement home in 15 years. Right, I think that's a legitimate concern. So who's the youth going to be that's going to work in name an industry, right? So I think Africa has a tremendous opportunity to be an engine of growth, and that's also sheer because of its demographics, because of its population growth.
Definitely. Now let's come back to World Trade Center Association, and I'd like to ask you if you have any special interest in Greece and in Southeastern Europe in general.
I thought you would never ask the question.
Why?
But no, I'm joking. But in a European context, the Western Balkans, the south part of Europe, is the emerging part of Europe. This is where the economy, again, from a lower base, smaller economies, but it's growing. We currently do not have a World Trade Center in Greece, and I think we should have one, honestly. We recently opened a licensed project in Sarajevo. This is a $135 million project, so it's a huge scale for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Where the same will happen in Belgrade in Serbia, so this is definitely happening in this part of Europe. But that focus on sort of the Mediterranean, the Southern European part here, and I think Greece is a very important economy in that ecosystem. So that's also one of the reasons why we very much enjoy, my colleagues and I, to participate in this forum, because it's so focused on this part of Europe, and that includes sort of the Mediterranean area, because it will also be growing. And we're definitely actively pursuing a license, a membership here with the business in Greece. And again, a World Trade Center is not a building. We have 100% name recognition in the world, but what people think it is, it's sometimes a little different. But World Trade Centers are logistical hubs, are airports, or seaports, could be universities, so it could be a variety, anything that has to do with trade. Even hospitality is trade as well. So that is the type of context that we like to see a World Trade Center operate in, be it with a private sector actor who becomes a licensee, or a public entity, or usually it's in a public-private partnership. And I think, again, there's a lot to do with that concept in Greece.
So I suppose that you're watching the Greek economy, and may I ask you, what's your opinion on the steps Greece has done in the last years?
I mean,
especially after the crisis, I mean.
Coming from the crisis, I think we had a conversation here with the Prime Minister yesterday, the Greek Prime Minister. I mean, the country almost fell off a cliff, right?
Really?
Well, economically and financially, this was it's a remarkable and astonishing turnaround. What happened in Greece? I mean, it literally came back big time. I think the economy is at the opposite place where it was all those years ago, also financially. And I'm just trying to paraphrase what the Prime Minister also said. It's also now a matter of making sure that everybody in the country can benefit from that progress, right? That's always important. But I think Greece, from a hospitality, tourism, on the shipping, the trading side, is a very, very powerful place to be. So I think, again, it will leverage that long history to continue to build on that.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask you two things in the same question. The first is if you share the same point of view about Southeastern Europe, if it's an emerging place about world trade. And the second has to do with Greek economy and Greek trade in detail. I mean, what do you think are the main products and the main assets for Greece to trade?
Southeastern Europe is a very difficult region in the world. Always. It was, it is, and it will be. For example, I'm talking basically for Western Balkan. Mm-hmm. This amazing financial program for Bosnia-Herzegovina, for example, for me is really something very important, because Bosnia-Herzegovina, we know, we are reading every day very, how to say, bad news from the country for a lot of reasons. And I hope that nothing will be happen, but it's necessary everybody to know that at any moment in the Western Balkan we can have war. real war, not economic war, but a real war, because it is always, Western Balkan was, is, and will be a problematic region in the world. Now, coming to the Greek economy, the Greek economy has two different phases, macro and micro. Macro is exactly, and I understand, I agree totally with the Prime Minister yesterday, and all the data and the numbers are really okay. The microeconomy has a lot of problems because we have 100,000 small, medium enterprises, very important for our economy because Greece is a very small economy, but with totally difficulties to understand the new era, to be more flexible, to use, for example, electronic commerce or to B2B platforms or to use new technologies, or I don't speak for artificial intelligence, we will be there after 20 years. But this creates a lot of problems to the real economy. And this is the big problem for Greece. 100,000 small, very, very small enterprises, companies.
And what about the assets, trading, the Greek assets?
Look, I think Greece, the big asset is always maritime and tourism, to be realistic. Of course, now the last 5-10 years, we have some new protagonists, but coming back to the real world, the reality is that maritime and tourism are playing crucial role, and will continue to play crucial role in the economy, day by day. But, of course, always Greece must have another plan B, because tourism is a very delicate activity for a lot of other reasons. Everybody can understand, it's obvious. It's necessary Greece to have plan B and plan C if something happens. And plan B, for me, it is only new technologies and artificial intelligence, innovation. And the country has a lot of problems in this field.
Do you think that the situation of Greek economy and all these things were previously mentioned should lead to a change of, attitude of regarding trade, of course?
I'm unfortunately not an expert on the Greek economy, but I think to that extent, what you were mentioning applies to Greece, but also to many other countries. Like, how do you make your economy future-proof? Are we educating our kids the skills that they need for the jobs tomorrow? And how do you compete in that environment with countries around the world where, I don't know who said it earlier today, one of the speakers, but like is your country, and I don't mean in this instance Greece, but that applies to any country, are you hungry? In a sense, not physically, but are you ambitious to go out there and change? Because other countries, you mentioned India, I mean, if you look at the curriculum, AI is in the school curriculum. So you have tens of thousands of engineers graduating on a rolling basis, right? So Apple is explaining that it's very hard for them to move factories away from those countries because they simply don't, no other nation has the engineering capacity. So how do you make your economy, your country future-proof? How do you make your hospitality future-proof? How do you make sure your shipping is future-proof? You mentioned AI and those new technologies. There's no way back. How do you implement them in your current, you have to nurture your existing drivers of your economy first, and then how do you make sure you're always a step ahead from, so you don't fall behind, because there's others in shipping and there's others in hospitality. And then again, look at youth, look at education to make sure that the next generation is with the times and not behind the times. And that's a universal principle that, that we all have to be very mindful of.
But the reality is that we lost a decade. We lost a decade during the crisis. Now the country is running, but this decade was crucial for the Greek economy. And don't forget that we lost 100,000 young people from the young generation because we had the brain drain. The brain, yes. And this means that now slowly the economy is starting to, has been stabilized, and of course starting to move ahead. But the other countries around us, they didn't lose this decade. They work on that around us and in the European Union. Of course, we are in better position, but it was a very crucial period for us.
That's true, but again, when you look at it maybe as an opportunity that the glass is half full, you see countries like Poland or Cyprus that have gone through similar migration patterns where young people are leaving and they're now coming back because the country is more stable, there's a better regulatory environment, there's more opportunities. So now actually it could be a benefit because people that have been gone for 10 years start businesses, got skills overseas, and now they're coming back as skilled workers, maybe with capital, right? Maybe starting more businesses. So that influx could actually become a contributor to the economy, provided there's enough of a framework, of course, to be welcoming to that. But I think historically we have seen migration of young people leaving, the country for lack of opportunity, but then coming back. And I think, from what I know from Greek culture, people are very passionate about their home, about their country. So I think this is a beautiful country, has everything to come back to.
Talking about Europe and talking about trade rules, do you think that the word federalization, the United States of Europe, we have heard it a lot of times, many times in the past years, could be the answer?
It was a dream. It is a dream, and it will be a dream. But now we are living in a totally different period. We lost time. And we lost a very crucial period of the history to become. I'm very federalist, for example, just to clarify it. I'm very pro-European because it's the only opportunity for Europe to continue to be a real power in the world. It's impossible. Germany, for example, which is the big power, or France or Italy, are very small countries looking at the international competition in the new environment. But the European Union as such is a very important power. I think that it is a solution. We will see after all this crisis, the last 2-3 years, how finally Europe will find a way to be more united. Because at the moment it's divided. And this is a crucial problem between the European countries. We don't have a common vision, a common approach. This is the main problem of the European Union today.
You have the last word.
Yeah, no, I think I remember the time the euro was introduced. It was also almost a mission impossible, and yet it happened.
It happened.
So Europe,
for example.
Yeah, the euro. Yeah. So in a time of crisis, in Europe sort of gets its act together. I think whether it's going to become a federalist organization is a different matter. I think what I think we will probably see down the road is more a Europe of two speeds. Where you will see certain countries taking a lead in certain areas and say, look, this is now where we need to go, and the ones who want to join, and you'll have two different speeds to make it workable. That was also mentioned in sessions earlier today, like at the end of the day, that consensus model, that's all, you have to also work with what's practical and what's possible. Because there's enough theories about how things can work in an ideal world and what structures can work, but it has to be practical, it has to be politically practical, and it has to be people will also need to want it, right, at the end of the day. So, but I do think, again, the glass is half full, and this is an opportunity to change things again for the better.
We discussed a lot of things, and guess what? We're still on time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this discussion, for this session, and thank you very much for watching us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.